This video is a how-to video for breaking the I have to cycle, a simple concept that has a tendency to, in particular, derail bright, well-educated people like, for example, academics. How often in your daily life do you say the words, I have to? I have to get this paper submitted. I have to get this proposal finished. Often it's in conjunction with offering a reason why you can't do something. I have to get this paper finished and so I can't go to the beach with you. I have to get this proposal finished and so I can't go out to dinner with you. I have to seems like such an innocuous, harmless phrase, but in reality it's quite dangerous. In this video, I'll unpack some of the key problems with using the phrase I have to regularly and give you one simple technique to break you out of this cycle. So what do people actually mean when they utter the words, I have to do something? Well, often it means that they're thinking that they have to do something because of their internal estimate of the consequences of doing that thing and the consequences of not doing that thing. Those consequences can be good things or perhaps bad things. And sometimes people say the words I have to out of autopilot, out of habit, without really even thinking about whether they mean those words in the first place. For example, someone might say to themselves, I have to get this grant proposal finished and submitted by today because the submission deadline is today. And if I miss the submission deadline, I won't have a chance of getting the grant, and without the chance of getting that grant, I won't have as strong a case for my academic promotion application or my application to become a tenured professor. The wording though is really important because that person doesn't have to do any of those things. They have an estimate of the consequences and they're choosing to do those things. They never have to do them. Now at this point of the video, you're probably thinking, why thank you, Captain Obvious. What other gems of wisdom do you have to share with us today? Well, it's not that simple. The phrase, I have to do something, is very problematic and there are a number of reasons why. The first problem is that it can become a self-reinforcing habit. So regularly, you might say the words, I have to do something. And the problem arises when instead of you continuing to evaluate the importance of that thing that you think you need to do on its own merits, you let the fact that you've said, I have to do something, justify doing that in of itself. And you lose the connection to the actual original thing that you're trying to think about doing. As a bright, well-educated person, you may think that's silly, I'm too smart for that, but the reality is that the words that we use both internally and verbally are very important and they have a significant subconscious effect on our actions. A second problem with using the words I have to is it doesn't allow any nuance. I have to is an absolute statement. It doesn't really facilitate the comparison of different tasks, the prioritization of different tasks and which ones are really important and which ones can wait for later. It also puts an absolute barrier in terms of communication with your friends, your family, and your colleagues. I have to do something is not very informative. A third problem with the phrasing I have to is that it can also easily and so often does become a regular barrier to a healthy work-life balance. You will find lots of professionals in high-pressure settings continually using this phrase, I have to put up a barrier and a reason why they can't spend more time with their families or their friends. The fourth and perhaps most substantial problem with the words I have to is that they are based around an individual's estimate of the consequences of doing or not doing something. And people are not good at estimating the consequences of their actions. And this is especially true for bright, well-educated people like academics. This means that a lot of the decision-making that drives these I have to statements can be based on flawed estimates of the consequences of doing or not doing that thing. Another related problem here is the tendency for many in academia to veer or lean towards perfectionism. Put all of this together and people are regularly following through on these I have to statements based on faulty or just straight out completely wrong predictions of the consequences of doing or not doing that particular task. So what can you do about this issue if it's affecting your own life? Well, luckily there's a very simple fix that I use with people that I mentor. The first part of the fix is simple self-monitoring. So for a period of a few days or few weeks, you need to monitor when you find yourself saying the words, I have to. Every time you catch yourself saying these infamous words, what you do is you deliberately substitute an alternative phrase. And that alternative phrase goes like this. I am choosing to do X because of A, B, and C, and I'm missing out on doing these other things. You can say this phrase internally in your head, or if you're really having trouble with this, you can say it verbally aloud. Then, once you've identified that you've said these words, you've come up with the alternative phrase that really represents what you're thinking, you then consider whether the phrase I have to do this really makes sense at all, or whether this is really something that perhaps doesn't need to be prioritized as much as those words would imply. Let's try it out in a practical example. It's 4:30 p.m. on a workday. Your partner or your kids or your friends are going down to the local park to throw a frisbee, or they're going out to catch up over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. And you catch yourself saying, I can't come, I have to get this paper finished. First step, you identify that you've uttered the words, I have to, and then you go with the phrase substitution. So the phrase substitution might go something like this. I am choosing to work on this paper to get it finished because I really want to submit it to the journal this week. I am afraid that if I wait until next week, I will have spent too much time on this paper and I really want to get it done now. Sounds a little different, doesn't it? You've substituted the words I have to with the words I am choosing to do so. And you've now enunciated some of the key considerations that are shaping your decision here. This exercise is all about making you stop momentarily and consciously and deliberately think about whether the information you're going on in your decision process and your priorities really makes sense in terms of prioritizing this one activity over your other options. In the evaluation process, you'll spend a lot of time thinking about consequences. So are the consequences of doing or not doing this activity actually what you think they are, or perhaps might you be slightly off target? One of the common consequences that drives a lot of I have to activity is the fear of disappointing other people. So your students, your fellow colleagues, or perhaps members of your international research community. But, and this is the key thing, it's important to note that by choosing this one activity, you are also disappointing other people in your life. Your partner, your kids, your family, or your friends. And so it's not a one-sided equation. There are people on both sides of the coin. There's an important caveat here. This is not a get out of all work or professional responsibilities card that you can play all of the time. Unless you are strictly regimented about separating out your professional and personal lives, there will, on occasion, be situations where the correct decision is to actually do that work thing instead of spending time with your family or friends. The key aim of this exercise is to stop this being the default action which you don't even think about each time. In wrapping up, it may feel slightly insulting to your capabilities to think about such a simple trick. But the reality of the situation is that bright, well-educated people have a tendency to put too much faith in their own discipline and their own capabilities to handle these things, and not enough faith in simple but highly effective tricks that can help them be more effective and happier. This particular exercise is really easy to do, is often instantly illuminating once you start trying it out, and can have great immediate effects on your decision-making processes. Most importantly, it can have an immediate positive effect. Breaking the I have to cycle is one of the healthiest things you can do for both your professional and personal life.